In this video, I'm going to show you how to DJ with your laptop for free using Serato DJ Pro. Now, in the previous video in this little series, I showed you as of today, the 1st of May 2020, and for the whole of May 2020, how to get Serato DJ Pro for free and how to get Serato Play, the add-on you need to be able to DJ on just your laptop with Serato DJ Pro, also for free. So you can get started for nothing. If you haven't got those things, head to that video. It's linked underneath. It's the first one in this playlist and get them. But assuming you have those things on your computer, in this video, I'm going to talk you through all the settings in your software, in your music, everything you're going to need to do and everything you're going to need to learn in order to be able to successfully DJ using the keyboard instead of a DJ controller to control the lot. It's totally possible. And to prove it's totally possible, in the third and final video in this kind of mini series, I'm going to give you a 10-minute totally annotated DJ set where I talk you through everything about how I did that set. Every key I pressed, every button, you'll see the lot and you'll realize how easy it is to do this, okay? So in this middle lesson of the three, I'm gonna talk you through all those really important settings. Once you've got Serato DJ Pro and Serato Play on your computer, this is the one that'll get you ready to DJ using just the keyboard and just the laptop. Right, let's get going. So the second step after we get our software on here is to set it up to work with Serato Play. Now, all DJ software lets you control it with keyboard shortcuts. Serato is unusual in that you need to have that expansion pack in order to do so. So the first thing we're going to need to do is just double check that our expansion pack is activated. Click on the cog at the top and go to the settings in order to do this. You have to click on expansion packs here, and then in your list of available packs, click on Serato Play and just check that it's been ticked. And that means that it is ready to go and you can get out of there. Now, we need to also make sure that Serato Play's controls are showing on our screen. And this tiny little crossfader here is the toggle for those. They're now on and you can see they've appeared. They're off and on. And here they are, down in this area here. So now we have Serato Play's controls. So we're also going to need to activate the hotkeys because they're not activated by default. So I'm going to head over here to this little cog down at the bottom right, or middle right, and Serato Play hotkeys. For the moment, I'm going to click this one off. I'll talk to you about that one in a minute. But Serato Play hotkeys needs to be on. With that off, you won't be able to use the hotkeys that I'm about to show you. So make sure that one's on. I don't think that's on by default, so that's important. So now we're going to need to tweak the preferences, the general preferences back in the normal settings for DJing with a keyboard. So let me show you what I like to set here. So one of the things that I like to set here is to have play from first cue point. And that is in order that when a track is loaded, if there's a cue point set, it will jump to it. And you're going to learn in a minute why this is important. I also like to use auto gain because it saves having to use the main volume controls very much. The fewer controls that we have to use, the better when we're doing this, because it's hard DJing on a keyboard, so we want to keep things as simple as possible. For the same reason, I like to have sync switched fully on, smart sync on, and have maintain sync on track load switched on. And that means that your sync will be on unless you turn it off all the way through. Again, you're going to want sync on because sync makes it easier to DJ in this way. So now we're back to the main screen of Serato, and you're going to need to learn some of the main keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to talk you through the keyboard shortcuts that you're going to be using over and over again. You really don't want to be using the mouse pad. You could just about use it to load tracks like this. You know, I do that, I have to admit, sometimes, although there's a perfectly easy keyboard shortcut for that as well. But you're going to want to learn at least 4 or 5 really key keyboard shortcuts in order to DJ this way. So I'm going to show you what those shortcuts are now. So the first shortcut is play pause. And for the left deck, it's the space bar, and the right deck, it's the enter key. So that's playing and pausing my music. The next one is the crossfader. And the crossfader on the screen is in the middle. And using the left and right cursors, we can scroll the crossfader from one deck to the other. And with the auto gain on, that's normally going to be enough without messing with the other volume controls for mixing, which is really useful. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we know where our hot cues are. And the hot cues for deck 1 are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You get 5 hot cues that you can use here. All 8 are on the software, but there's only 5 keys. And for deck 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. And actually the keyboard's divided down the middle. A lot of the controls are mirrored on the left and right. And when you look at the keyboard shortcuts, I'll show you in a minute how to do that, you will see that that's the case. So as you're learning them, just bear that in mind. Now, the sync buttons are important as well. This is sync for deck 1 and this is sync for deck 2. You can tap these to pull the track back into sync sometimes if it's slipping out, or if you want to turn sync off to play a particular track that hasn't got a good beat grid or something like that. So the final one is nudge. So nudge is important because it lets you nudge the tracks together if they're slipping apart. And the nudge for deck 1 is these two here. And you can actually see at the very top left that the little nudge minus and plus are going on, and you can actually see the waveform moving very slightly as well. And it's O and P for the second deck, and you can see the waveform moving there, and you can also see on the very far right that they are lighting up now as well. So you can look at all these keys by clicking on here and clicking View Keys, and that'll give you a really useful Serato hotkeys overlay that you can look at, and that'll tell you what all the other ones are. And I actually recommend taking a photo of these in order to have it handy when you're learning this stuff. And I guess one other thing it might be worth turning on is Quantize up here. Quantize allows you to just be a little bit looser in the way that you attack your hotkeys and your pauses and plays and so on. And again, because you're on a keyboard, you maybe can't be quite so accurate, and Quantize kind of snaps everything to the beat grid and makes you sound a little bit better for free, which is always good. All right then, so we've done the setting up of the software, so it's going to work. What about the, and we've done the hotkeys, of course. What about the music? What are we going to need to do to our music to make it work? Well, just a couple of little things that I think are important to do. So let's have a look at those. So the first thing you want to do is check your beat grids are okay. Your beat grids are the grids that are laid over the beats, and you can see on these tracks, you're looking at the top track now that I'm moving, there's a number 2 and a number 3, and these are both lined up to beats. These are actually the beginnings of bar 2 and bar 3 of the track. So we can see these are all lined up nicely, and I can skip through the track all the way through this track. We can see our beats are all lined up nicely. These lines are lining up with the beats of the kick drums. That's what we want, because that means that that's been beat gridded correctly by the software. Nearly always your music will be beat gridded correctly by the software. But sometimes it'll get it wrong, and if it does, your sync functions won't work, your beat gridded effects won't work, and a few other things are going to sound a bit off. So you need to check those. We can't go into beat gridding here. In our DJ courses, both our DJ Made Easy course and our Complete DJ course, we go into beat gridding in more detail. But I've also linked underneath here to an article on Digital DJ Tips with 10 tips for getting your beat grids right. So if you want to investigate beat gridding more, then do so. But it's very important that all the tracks that you're going to be DJing with using your keyboard have been properly beat gridded, or you're going to find it very hard to keep those beat mixes tight. So that's the first thing. The second thing you're going to want to do is put some cue points on your tracks. And the reason for this is it's quite hard to move around in the tracks on the software because you don't have a big jog wheel. So you're going to have to kind of grab your mouse and click on the waveform, and it's a bit lame. So we want some cue points in important places, or at the very least on the first beat or the first place where you want to mix in. So it's very, very easy to load a track and have it ready to mix or to practice with it, and then get it back to the beginning whenever you want without having to grab the mouse. So again, very, very simple. So this track that I've got loaded here, so I'm going to have to grab the mouse now to move back to the beginning of this because I haven't got a cue point at the beginning. So let's jump right back to the beginning. So there's the first beat, and I'm going to put a cue point on there by pressing the key. Do you remember? For deck 1, it's the number 1 is the first cue point. Hit there, and a cue point has now been added. It's on the screen, and it's also at the beginning of the track. And all I've got to do is hit 1 again. Wherever I am in the track, I could be halfway through the track, playing the thing, I hit 1, it'll take me back to the beginning there. If I'm not playing it, I hit 1, it'll take me back to the beginning, and it'll wait. But either way, that cue point is now set and ready. Now, if you want to delete your cue points, unfortunately, you do have to use the mouse pointer. You go to the cue and click the little X to delete it. So once you've got your beat grids and your cue points on your music, once you have activated the software and got it all set up and working, once you've learned those initial hot cues and you set the software up to do what you want, you're ready to start practicing. And what I recommend you do now is get some music in there. So if you have just downloaded this from the off, there's a few ways to get music in. You can use your SoundCloud or your Tidal subscription and put your username and password in there to get that in, or just grab a folder of music and drag it into Serato and drop it on the library. It will all import and analyze. Or you can activate iTunes in the settings. There's a little tick box and then all your iTunes music will show up. But you have to get some music in there, of course, to DJ from, and the music we've been looking at here is already in my collection, okay? So at this point, practice. At this point, you want to get tracks on each deck, get used to mixing between them, get used to cutting out the gaps. You're going to make loads of mistakes. It's all cool. It's going to take you a couple of hours to get used to it, to get that muscle memory. It does feel a bit weird, especially if you're used to a controller. And if you're learning for the first time, you're probably at an advantage because you're not used to using a controller. But whatever it takes, spend a couple of hours getting yourself to the point where you can cut out the gaps and move that crossfader, and it's starting to sound roughly like a DJ set. So at that point, it's time to start adding to your skills. And I'm just going to show you a few more controls now that you're going to see in the next video when I perform a DJ set for you, so you know what you're looking out for. A few more controls that you want to add to your repertoire as you start to improve. So the first one is the crossfader cut. Now on some keyboards, these three keys here, the square bracket, and the backward slash are in a line. And so Serato obviously thought that would be a nice line to have for an alternative crossfader. It doesn't work so well on this one because they're like this, but I've got used to it. So what this does is the crossfader can be taken all the way to the left, all the way to the middle, all the way to the right, all the way back to the middle, all the way back to the left, all the way to the right. In other words, it cuts the crossfader in and out. You can have the left-hand deck, the right-hand deck, or both instantly. The reason that's useful is that the crossfader activated with the arrow keys, the cursor keys, it moves slowly, and sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want to be in and out quickly. So you've got the crossfader cut as an alternative way of using the crossfader. Now the second controls I want to show you are the individual channel levels. So for the left-hand deck, they are G and B. The level is moving up and down there. For the right-hand deck, they are H and N. These are useful as you're building your skills because despite having auto gain on, sometimes tracks are just a bit quieter than others. You might be mixing a quiet bit of a track into a loud bit of another track and you want to beef it up a bit. So having control of those individual levels as well as the crossfader lets you do that. And I like to play with those levels at about 80%, so I can push a track up a bit or pull them down and keep them balanced that way. There's a bit of give, a bit of headroom there as well. Knowing how to control those can keep your mixes smoother. The third controls I want to show you are the EQs. So for deck 1, these two keys, A and Z, are the low. Next to them, S and X are the mid. Next to them, C and D are the high. And then next to that is the filter. So we've already looked at the volume controls, which are the next ones. Then we're on to the other deck. So we've got the volume controls for the other deck next to the volume controls for the left-hand deck. And then we go back to filter, low, mid, and high. So these are all laid out as they're laid out on the main screen. Now, here's a little tip. You can kill and restore very quickly those controls. Let me show you how to do that. By holding down Option and pressing the lowering button. So for instance, for the left-hand bass, that's killed the bass all the way. And by pressing A, it'll put the bass back to the middle. So that's it's an easy way to reset all the EQs very quickly. It's just to go like that. That's all the filters and EQs very quickly back to naught for the left-hand deck. And I can do the same for the right-hand deck here. They're all back to naught very fast there. So that's a really good trick to know to cut and to bring back in those controls, a bit like the crossfader controls I just showed you, so that you've got that smoothness or you've got that in and out depending on how you're mixing. Holding down Option and pressing 1 will engage a loop. You can see I've got a loop on and a loop off on that deck. And on the other deck, you're not going to be surprised to know that it's Option and 6, just like 1 and 6 would be Q1 for each of those decks as well. If you want to alter the size of your loop, then 2 and 3 will halve and double the size. You can go all the way up to 32 and all the way down to tiny amounts as well. Very useful to be able to do that, especially because you're devoid of quite a lot of the scratching and playing around with your music on the keyboard. So being able to mess around with loops is one of the good things that it's actually quite easy to do on a keyboard. And by holding down Option and pressing the nudge keys, instead of momentarily nudging, they'll actually move the tempo. So it's speeding up the tempo, and you can see it changing on the screen of this track and slowing down the tempo of that track. And when your tracks are synced together, it will do both decks at once. If you want to change deck 2, Option and O and P. Again, it's the same buttons that we were pressing for nudging. So that's easy to remember. Just touch it and it will nudge it, and hold down Option and it will actually change the tempo. And actually, because the tempo moves nice and slowly when you're doing that, it can be a nice way to slowly alter the BPM when you're DJing. It's something that if you just do it for a second or two at a time to push the tempo up a bit, no one is going to notice and say, wait a minute or two, do it again. And I find it's an easy way of moving around the tempos when I'm beat mixing. All right, then there's one more thing I want to cover, and we touched on it earlier, and this is, what do you do if you want to, the way this is set up now, unplug the headphones from here and you'll be able to DJ with your laptop speakers. It's going to sound mega lame, right? So, the way I use it is I plug a really nice pair of headphones in and I just get lost in my DJing wherever I want. But there are times, especially when you're not practicing, when maybe you want to perform in other people, where you're going to need a couple of extra things. You're going to need a speaker, but also you're probably going to quite like the idea of hearing your next track before you mix it in and practicing and so on, like you would do on a DJ controller or on a pair of decks and a mixer. So how do we do that? Well, we do need one extra thing, but it's actually very simple. So let me explain how to do it. Well, first we're going to need a speaker. I've got a speaker here, nice little portable speaker. So we've got that, pop that down there. We're going to need a couple of leads. So the first and most crucial lead that we're going to need is what's called a DJ splitter cable. This is a DJ splitter cable. It has a single mini jack, which plugs in place of your headphones into your laptop. And on the other end of it, it has two outputs. So you plug your headphones into the correct one of those outputs. On this cable, I think they're marked, but if it's not working how it should, just swap them. There's my headphone monitoring. And in the other one, you plug the correct cable, whatever it might be, to plug into your powered speaker or speakers. It has to be wired. You can't use Bluetooth or anything because it will not work. So I now have an output for my room, and of course you could plug this into a PA system if you wanted. And I have the ability to monitor here. But hey, you might be thinking, Phil, surely you're going to hear the same thing in both of these. Not so fast, because that ain't no normal splitter cable. That is called a DJ splitter cable or a mono splitter cable. This has been known for years, this hack. Years and years and years. I was using it back in the early 2000s. DJs have used this ever since software DJing appeared. What the software does when you tell it that this is the way you want to DJ is it sends the master output for your speaker down one of the stereo outputs to your headphones. You've normally got two outputs, haven't you? And down the other one, it sends the queuing output, the output for the next deck, and I'll show you the controls in a minute. And although that means that they're both in mono, actually, in practice, it's fine. It's brilliant. It's a great little hack. Suddenly you can DJ the way you always have, using a speaker and your usual headphones and just one little extra cable that costs you $5 on Amazon. So this is a great little cable to have knocking around anyway for this kind of DJing. But there are a couple of things you need to change inside the software, or one thing you need to change and a couple of controls you need to know about. So let's go back and have a look at those to end off here. In the Serato Play settings, we need to click Use Split Headphone Cable. Now, on clicking that, a couple of things have appeared. This little set of headphones here is telling me that when I hit play on this deck, I will hear in my headphones this deck. Now I will hear in my headphones that deck. Where the crossfader is set decides what the audience are hearing through the speaker. So with the crossfader to the left, but the right-hand headphone selected, the left-hand deck is going to be playing to the audience, the right-hand deck is going to be playing to me, and that's what we want. I can get it ready, and when I'm ready, when it's all sounding good, I can move the crossfader across. So your pre-fade queuing is achieved in that way. And the only other control I haven't shown you is the volume control for the cues, which is on the far left here. And that will adjust the volume control for your headphones. So You now know everything you need to know to DJ on Serato DJ Pro with Serato Play. In the previous video, I showed you how to get this software for free, certainly in May 2020. In this video, I've taught you through all the settings you need to do on the software, all the settings you need to do to your music, the things to your music to make it work. I've taught you through basic keyboard shortcuts. I've taught you through advanced keyboard shortcuts, and I've shown you how to get headphones and speakers separate if you want to actually perform with this. In the next and final video in this little mini series, I'm going to show you a mix that I've prepared just to show you what's possible. I've annotated the whole mix so that you can understand what I was doing. You can actually see my hands on here, and you can see all the controls. I'm telling you what they are, and you can hear the results, which will hopefully inspire you and show you what's possible with this. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please do hit subscribe. Please do share this if it's been useful to you, and I'll see you in the next video.